Hello and welcome to The Nation. I'm Daniel Rahman. The World Economic Forum forecasts that by 2025, 85 million jobs and roles will be displaced due to advancement in technology and division of labor between humans and machines. Nevertheless, 97 million new roles, or a net increase of approximately 12 million, will emerge. For Malaysia, ensuring that our workforce is able to fulfill these emerging roles becomes crucial for long-term economic growth and societal prosperity. In addition, as we emerge from the setbacks of the COVID-19 pandemic, Malaysia needs to stay competitive as our regional neighbours have accelerated their efforts in this technology-driven era. The big questions are, firstly, can Malaysian businesses survive and thrive in this fourth industrial revolution? And secondly, what do we need to do to ensure that we develop the right talent to spur us forward? To answer these critical questions and more, we have with us today IREEN OMAR, President of Ventures of Capital A, as well as Dr. Margarita PEREDARYENKO, Chief Research Officer of EMIR Research. IREEN and Dr. Margarita, who is joining us virtually, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Fantastic. Dr. Rita, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great. So for today's show, we'll be discussing tackling tech talent for the fourth industrial revolution. Allow me to get right into it, IREEN. Now, the global market is gearing towards the fourth industrial revolution, which is expected to produce highly intelligent industrial and commercial sectors. However, there is a growing concern that emerging technologies are outpacing our workforce. What are your thoughts on this?
I think there's some truth in that. As we become more digitalized, as we become more data-driven and using AI and machine learning and so forth, we seem to not have the right talent to be able to bring forward or speed up that growth and be prepared to be successful in the industrial revolution of 4.0. So I think there's a skill mismatch, and that's something that we need to do about it, because otherwise we end up importing talent from all around the world. And true enough, any company, any organization that's embracing digitalization or going through digital transformation will be looking for the same kind of talent worldwide. So are there enough talent in that pool to make this a success?
Right. Could you give a perspective from the organization that you are coming from?
Yes, so we're now known as Capital A because Capital A is now, we have various companies, and we're not just an airline, and we have pivoted into non-airline digital businesses, and that includes recently Super App, FinTech, BigPay, our logistic company, Teleport. I'm currently incubating a business called AIREEN Academy, which is an edutech platform, and also a Muslim portal called Ikhlas. So as we move towards this non-airline digital businesses, firstly, there are a lot of things that we need to do. Firstly is understanding the data, because all that data came from the airline. We are rich in data. How do we make sure that those data are actually kept in one foundry so that we could visualize those data better, and we could build these new businesses better, and we could leverage on all the ecosystem that we have and be successful in it. So as we build these new businesses, and they're very data-driven, very AI-driven, and using algorithms and machine learning and all those blockchain and technology that we're using, we do need that kind of talent. And we realize that it's not easy to find that talent here. And as a result, we decided that, well, the first thing that we could do is to firstly upskill the existing tech talent that we have and make sure that they're world-class in nature,
right,
that they have the relevant modern technology. And secondly, as we do more and more machine learning work, how do we make use of the existing manpower who are non-tech based, right? Because they too need to be part of the digital journey. So this is where we decided to reskill them.
Right, and I'll get back to the point on reskilling in just a moment. On that note, Dr. Rita, if I could get your thoughts on reskilling and this digital skills gap that you see emerging, because I read an article that you co-wrote with Datuk Rais Hussein, which mentioned about the Malaysia brain drain, don't go chasing waterfalls, and I thought it was quite an insightful piece. especially the part which mentioned that about 500,000 Malaysian diaspora are of high skill out of the 2 million out there. So what are your thoughts on, well, number one, brain drain, but also the impact that it has on the digital talent of the country?
Well, the brain drain could be a big obstacle for some of the short-term reactive measures that we can think of to fill in that gap in the short term. Because if we want to tackle this issue of the lack of 4IR talents, we need to work on three directions, which is short term, we need to fill in gap. In the medium to long term, we need to create a digital environment, which means we need to complexify our industry. And in the long term, we need to focus on our education system, right? However, in the short term, we could think about, for example, allowing the international students who already study in Malaysia and who have, let's say, a relevant skills to be employed to basically fill in that shortage of critical talents in a very short term. And maybe we could also think of hand hunting those same foreign students who are already there and graduating, or maybe even tap into the foreign talents pool. However, this is a strategy that is routinely deployed by other nations who actually understand the importance of human capital. However, we can foresee how this will be quite challenging for Malaysia, just like our so-called brain gain programs, which unfortunately appears do not work very well.
Right, and I'll get to the point on brain gain shortly. But the point on attracting international talent is something that's very interesting, and perhaps I could get Ireen's thoughts on that. Because we see that in Singapore, in Thailand, they're creating special visas to attract top talent. So what are your thoughts on Malaysia doing something of this sort, or the need for it?
Yeah, certainly that short term needs to be addressed while we build our long-term solutions. How we see it is like some companies are building tech centers outside of Malaysia, like Bangalore or Vietnam and Singapore as well. So it's not just about providing the right kind of visa, but also incentives to corporations that if you build your data science team or data center of excellence in Malaysia or cybersecurity in Malaysia, then you get a certain incentives, whether it's in the form of tax or some form of salary incentives and that kind of thing, basically. And we certainly have seen that with EDB in Singapore, right, where they have successfully built a data center of excellence for the region and cybersecurity, and attracting all the right kind of talent from all around the world, and making sure that Singapore is a hub in the region for those. So yeah.
I mean, I think we've seen the Malaysian government try to incentivize, but of course market forces tend to dictate wages, especially because Malaysia is still trying to get into that high-income nation status. So perhaps either of you, of Dr. Rita, have any thoughts on what specifically are the areas in which Malaysia can generate these high-skill but also high-paying jobs for local talent in the sector?
Okay. How about championing, for example, food security? Because I think we have all the ingredients to succeed and drive the food security championate. Because we have massive unutilized land. Currently, we have only 2% is arable, and we have also huge youth unemployment, and we have a captive domestic food market. For example, how much we spent in the 2021, it was 63.6 billion. That's a huge captive domestic market. And the massive need for the technologies and innovations that the developing the agro-tech industry can actually create could precisely help us to start complexifying our industry. For example, in Selangor, MDEC has partnered with the PPK Kuala Langat to assist a few smallholder chili planters which was attached to it. And I just want to give this as a very inspiring example. What they have done is they found a funding for this small chili planters, and they also found fertigation technology, which was initially supposed to be imported from outside. And at that time, of course, the cost was quite astronomical. But what MDEC has done, they found actually a local talent which could produce exactly the same technology, even better, which was coming with the application, and it costs 50 times less, but the impact that it has on the farmer's life could never be the same anymore, because the yield was increased by 33% and the income rose by 22%. Wow. So can you imagine, we could address the food security, and we could also start complexifying.
Yeah, and that's really very interesting. So, so there's food tech, food agriculture. Irene, what are your thoughts on the various sectors, or perhaps something that Capital A is looking into?
So, for instance, based on our own experience in digital transformation, we have to restructure the whole organization for us to be able to build and pivot fast. And the first thing that we needed to do was to reorganize our own tech team, because they were initially called ICT, and ICT is meant to just help business as usual, to make sure the system is not down, bookings are okay, and
very
so forth.
Very technical stuff,
Correct. So it's just to support the business operation. But to be where we are today, to have that super app, to have fintech, to have all sorts of non-airline digital businesses or so, and become a tech company, you need software engineers. You need digital marketers, data scientists, product UI UX designers, cloud infrastructure experts, and cybersecurity. And these are the talent that we need ourselves. And there's not enough talent out there. So what do we do, right? So it could, we could always hire people outside. We could always pinch people globally, but it's not going to be sustainable. It's going to be expensive. So how do we make this sustainable? Build a talent pipeline ourselves. Build an academy that actually groom the right kind of talent, because we need to build our own muscles. It's not just about bringing talent from abroad, but we need to start building our own muscles and so forth. So that's what the AirAsia Academy is all about, actually, to make sure that we have that right tech talent, to reskill the non-tech talent so that they can enjoy and build a career of themselves in the digital economy, and to ensure that we'll always have the right talent to reach our goals and so forth. So that's where I think it's really important.
I'd like to stay on this point on talent, because I think it's very important. There was a data point which says that we need to encourage more women to get involved, especially in the tech space, because it tends to be predominantly male currently. And it was forecasted, I believe, by the World Economic Forum that the women participation in the workforce will increase from about 55% currently to 63% by 2040. So about 18 years from now. What are your thoughts, with Irene or Dr. Rita, about the role of women participation in the workforce? And if you look on the screen right now, it's flashing up a WEF gender gap, which also says that to close disparities, it could take 267 years at the current rate that we're going. So clearly something needs to be accelerated. Perhaps Dr. Rita could get some of your thoughts on this first.
Well, I think this could be a big opportunity for women to balance their work life and family life due to the rise of so-called remote working. Provided, of course, we can get more women involved in tech. However, we must also keep in mind something that was found by McKinsey, this research house. They study actually the opportunities for the remote working, and they found that it is generally the level of technological advances, innovation, and digital transformation in the industry that actually defines the scope of tasks and collaborations that can be done remotely. So if you look at our currently shrinking industry, you have to remember that this is going to be quite a big obstacle there. However, perhaps to promote the female participation in the tech, the government could probably work closely with international non-profit organizations such as Malaysian chapter of Women in Tech, Global Movement, or Girls Who Code, just to empower more Malaysian girls to equip with coding skills and venture into the technology sector.
Right, and I do believe that women are not just in remote roles, but also roles in the front lines of the tech organizations. Irene, are there any thoughts you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree to Dr. Rita, right? When we first started as an airline, there were no female pilots. And then, the application for pilots are all male also. So how do we change that? We created an aviation academy and encouraged our first cadet program to open to all gender. including girls. After they finish their SPM, they can join us. And now we're looking at about 10% of the pilot pool are ladies, basically. So the same thing can be done.
Do you aim to grow
with
bigger?
tech.
So yeah, 10%.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you see, we might give them all the opportunity for them to be able to build that skills, but that interest must be there in the first place. So sometimes that interest must be instilled since school. Like pilot is one of the options that a girl or lady can have a career. So the same thing with tech. We see a lot of software engineers, data scientists, cybersecurity experts are mostly male.
That's right.
How can we change that, right? So it's the same thing. We need to open up their minds and keep advertising and say that women also have the opportunity to have a great career in tech. In fact, it's probably better because your income uplift will be a lot faster as you gain more and more experience and so forth. So we have to instill this in school. And we also have a campaign in the academy where we call #RatuTech.
RatuTech.
Yes, so it's really to encourage women to change careers or start thinking about having more tech skills. And we decided to do this with corporates and also reach out the underprivileged ladies, especially the B40s or the unemployed or ladies who want to be in the workforce, single mothers and so forth, to build up the skill sets so that they can land in-demand jobs for them.
And of course, look, our two panel members today are both fantastic ladies in their own right, in their own industries. So I'd like to ask next on a point which was raised quite frequently during this discussion, which is on education. Now, perhaps you can start with Dr. Rita. On a more fundamental level, what changes do you see required within our education system, keeping in mind, for example, that we are moving away from exam-oriented education system? Various exams have been abolished, but we are still very much a rote learning culture here in Malaysia. So perhaps, the 2 or 3 key things that need to change at the education system. And I'll then come to IREEN on the same question.
Okay, well, at EMIR Research, we always maintain that these are the following changes that we need to do to education system. Number 1, we need to infuse our syllabus with the 4 IR elements from a very, very beginning, from the primary school level and kindergarten. And when we speak about these 4 IR elements, we also must understand that that must be the right elements as well. We cannot just teach our children, just to use the technology, even if, let's say, they're playing educational games, because we don't need a nation of consumers of technologies. We already have one, but we need a nation of creators of technology. So we need to emphasize always the creators of technology approach. We need to also have a stronger methodology in our syllabus. In other words, we need to disproportionately focus on higher emphasis on the highest level of the Bloom's taxonomy, basically to create new knowledge. So we need not the student to reproduce, for example, this chapter of the book or that chapter of the book. How asking them to produce a new chapter of the book. And finally, the final point, I think we need to really transcend this humanities sciences divide from the school to university level. We actually already become streamless by the 2020. However, students until now can quite freely choose the subjects from the STEM or non-STEM pool. So what we need to do is we need to develop a standard, well-balanced set of subjects, STEM and non-STEM, which all students are required to take, irregardless of their orientation. And like, for example, this is done in Singapore. In some universities, they are making computational thinking, statistics, programming absolutely required skills for all humanities or sciences. And last point I want to make, because this approach will also help to increase something that we really need for the 4th industrial revolution, which is called job mobility. Job mobility, it is actually not a problem, but the innate and in fact desired characteristics of 4IR, when people are very much versatile with their skills and they can easily be transferred from one job to another.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rita. And I just want to preface it a little bit more. According to a 2021 impact report by Coursera, there are about 68 million enrollments in online learning last year, which is a pretty big year-on-year growth. Now, in light of what Dr. Rita said about versatility of learners, and you've got the AirAsia Academy, what are your thoughts on how digital learning can help bridge the gaps that exist amongst talent and businesses and the education system?
So firstly, there's the industry skills that's in demand that's required. And then there's skills where you acquire from school, which may not be industry ready and may not be job ready. And we need to bridge that gap. And this is where we come in and making sure that we create courses to be able for them to be job ready. Now, online education is key because it's more scalable, it's accessible, and it can be very affordable, and it can help you to monitor individual, educators can monitor individual learners and see where they come in, and it can potentially predict the outcome of the learners, how they learn, and whether they're going to fail or pass the exam, and if so, they can make a recommendation on what they need to do to address that weaker subject, and all this can be AI related, basically. So I think on-demand learning is the future. Right. It's really because you could learn anytime, anywhere, whenever you want to, at your own time, at your own pace, or so. So I think that's the way forward, and we can make that as interactive as possible. And who knows, there could be a metaverse of education as well, because you always have a popular professor or popular educator, and you can only have so much classes for that educator. So how do we make it into an avatar that everybody can have access to anytime, anywhere, and learn at their own pace and get the right kind of certification and recommendation.
Access to education driven by technology would be the way to bridge it. I'd like to stay with you for a moment and ask this question about, a lot of times we've mentioned agro-tech, we've mentioned about the software engineers, and a lot of this is, as I would like to call it, the hard tech. Whereas we have soft tech, which is using technology for better outcomes. For example, better health outcomes, promote nutrition, psychology, and mental well-being. Now, what are your thoughts on this softer side of what technology can do in terms of job creation? And how do we nurture tech talent for softer tech, i.e. using technology for health, nutrition, well-being, and all of that?
I think that's equally important. I mean, aside from that hard tech, I think communication skills is very, very important. Like, how do you actually express what you're building or developing that could be good for the world globally and so forth, right? If you're not able to express and argue what you have built, then it's going to be difficult or so. The ability to be agile, to work in a teamwork, and what does it mean by being agile and work as a team is also very important. These are the soft skill sets that people may overlook, but they're important as well. And of course, what you mentioned, health tech, agri-tech, and so forth, that comes into play together. Understanding consumer behavior is also a psychological thing that people need to understand, so they could actually build, for example, a proper layout, a better user journey, a seamless user journey when one goes to the internet or their mobile app to do a certain transaction and so forth. Right,
thank you. And I'd like to move on to Dr. Rita. We've only got about 2 minutes left, so perhaps 1 minute for Dr. Rita and 1 minute for IREEN. My last question is, are you optimistic about Malaysia's future potential in being able to compete in this fourth industrial revolution? Yes or no, and why?
I think we are optimistic. We shall never give up. But at the same time, all the Malaysians must remember about that one critical variable, which is at the root cause of all of these issues that we talk about. Right? If we speak about, again, the brain drain, remember the Malaysian brain drain is voting with their feet against the overall setup of the policy making and governance, that governance crisis that we have. So that is the one crucial variable that we need to fix. After that, everything else will start falling into like a pieces of puzzle.
Right, so better governance, clearer policy direction and support.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And IREEN, how about yourself?
I think we have potential, but we have a lot of catching up to do. Yes, policies have to be in place that's relevant, that allows people to, speed to market is important. Mindset is also important. People need to have an open mind. And I think we really need to start early since kindergarten maybe, education, it's really important to have that in schools and in universities, and to promote lifelong learning, because education is not just when you go to school or when you go to university. It's actually throughout your whole career. It's a lifetime. Even after you retired, you need to be able to always improve yourselves, basically.
Thank you very much, and I really love that point on lifelong learning. It reminds me of a quote by Alvin Toffler where he said, "The illiterate of the future isn't one who cannot read and write, but one who cannot learn, unlearn, and most importantly, relearn." On that note, Irene, thank you very much for all the insights, as well as Dr. Rita. For those of you at home, that's all the time we have on today's episode. We were in conversation with IREEN Omar, President of Ventures of Capital A, as well as Dr. MARGARITA PEREDARYENKO, Chief Research Officer of EMIR Research. And today we were discussing tackling tech talent gap for the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. I'm Daniel Rahman. Bye for now.